This is Optimal Startup Daily, episode 673, an excerpt from the book Who's Your Mike? Part 2 by Wilkin. And welcome back. I'm your narrator, Dan, and if you were with me yesterday, you heard part 1 of this excerpt from Wilkin's book, and I'm going to continue that today. So if you haven't listened to yesterday's episode, today's will make a lot more sense if you go back and do that. That is episode 672 from Wednesday, August 3rd. So if you are caught up, let's get right to part 2 as we continue optimizing your life. An excerpt from the book Who's Your Mike? Part 2 by Wilkin. What do you do when you think you've outgrown long-term legacy members of your team? The ones who helped you scrap and claw your way up from startup to success. You love them, but they may not be a fit now that you're professionalizing your team and adding key leaders who've done this before. You may have to either demote them by putting them back into an individual contributor role or simply let them go. On the other hand, it's also tricky for entrepreneurs to identify and develop talented future leaders on their legacy team, and hiring people from the outside can be even trickier. You see, most entrepreneurs hire reactively. While that may work for some of you, for the vast majority of us, that's how we end up with people problems. Before you even begin to hire or recruit, you should take a step back and 1. Understand where your company's going. 2. Know the key initiatives that will drive future growth. And 3. Assess your existing team against those initiatives. Assessing your existing team against your future growth initiatives. This is a tricky wicket for most entrepreneurs. But if you truly want to grow your company to that proverbial next level and beyond, honestly assessing the capabilities of your existing team is critical. In my nearly 3 decades working with high-growth entrepreneurial companies, I've developed a few key questions you can ask yourself to identify the key players and the weak links on your team. As you read these questions, think about each member of your team. Long-term legacy employees, new hires, it doesn't really matter. When you start assessing your team based on these simple questions and answer them honestly, you'll gain clarity. Number 1. Knowing today what you know about your organization and where you're going, would you enthusiastically rehire Mike for his current role? I believe this is the single most important question you can ask yourself about every member of the team. Think about how this question can inform your decision-making moving forward. With someone like Mike, for example, you'd be lying to yourself if you said, yes, I would enthusiastically rehire Mike as my CFO. Now, this doesn't mean Mike needs to go, but he's probably not the strategic CFO you need for this next stage of growth. Number 2. Does Mike have the skills, experience, and tools to get you to that next level, however you choose to define that? This one's a little more nuanced than number 1. Mike may have the passion and skills, but does he have the experience required to get you there? If not, you may want to pair him with a coach or advisor who has that experience. Otherwise, the road to where you're going is going to be filled with a lot of potholes. And in many cases, once you promote a strong individual contributor to a leadership role, you may not only lose a great individual contributor, but you're also handing the reins to someone who has never built or managed a team. You're probably setting him and them up for failure. Number 3, what if you had a team of Mikes? How strong would your team be? This question can help you check your gut since it's a hypothetical exercise and will evoke an emotional reaction. If you get a sinking feeling thinking about a team of Mikes, then that's a pretty good indicator for how you feel about him. And number 4, what if Mike came into your office and quit tomorrow morning? How would you feel? Another good gut feeling question. If hearing that question made you panic and start thinking about ways to stop him from quitting, that may be your answer. However, don't confuse a short-term pain in the with the right longer-term answer. Losing Mike may still be the right answer, but it'll suck in the short term. If you paused for a moment and thought, that would make life much easier, that's probably your answer. The positives. When you've got an employee who's an A player in their current role, you want to keep them and you want to fuel their motivation. But how do you keep them energized without promoting them too far, turning your A player into a future problem? It's a balancing act. An employee kicking in their current role doesn't necessarily translate if overpromoted. Overpromotion is a sure way to turn today's heroes into tomorrow's problems. The first step, again, is to know your goals. Then design an ideal candidate profile or blueprint for the position you're creating. Map out the skills and experience you'll need before you consider current employees. If you want to get there faster, then you'll be looking for experience scaling a high-growth entrepreneurial company. It's not just about want to, it's also about know-how. Once you've determined that you should look outside for this new role, the hard part begins. Sit down with the employee and be open and honest about the new role. Explain how different the duties and expectations are from what they've been doing. Depending on the role, this can be an easy conversation. When you sit down with them, make sure you're getting to the heart of the matter. What is it they actually want? Everyone wants to be rewarded for their efforts, especially when they know they're a huge part of what got you to where you are today. In most cases, the employee will want to feel like they're moving up, whether that's in title, prestige, equity, or compensation. The company is growing, and it's only natural for them to want to grow with the company. Listen carefully to what they say, because it'll make a huge difference in how you handle the situation. If they want a promotion simply because they want more money, well, that's not enough reason for you. You can find other, less risky ways to reward them for performance. If it's just about the title and perceived prestige that comes with a promotion, there are other ways to make that happen too. For example, one founder friend promoted her main salesperson to partner when facing this situation. Be careful though, title inflation is real and may cause issues down the road. Just remember, you're making the best decision you can for your company, not for each employee individually, no matter how much you appreciate them or love them. The most critical move you can make is to act. If you let it fester too long, it'll only get worse. You just listened to an excerpt from the book, Who's Your Mike? By Kurt Wilkin. And thanks again to Kurt, and one thing I didn't mention yesterday in part 1 is that prior to founding HireBetter, Kurt founded and led the Controller Group, TCG, a professional services firm focused on accounting, technology, and recruiting, which was then acquired by Tatum in 2006. Post-acquisition, Kurt led the doubling of the firm's revenues over a 3-year period. And again, you can find him at HireBetter.com. And big thanks to Kurt for letting us share his work. All right, that wraps up this episode of Optimal Startup Daily. I, as always, thank you for being here and for clicking subscribe or follow in your podcast app. And with that, I will see you back here tomorrow, where your optimal life awaits.